Hello, hello. Welcome back. So this is episode 2 of the Member Experience Advantage. I see people are just starting to gather. Hello, Sierra. Welcome back. Irene, nice to meet you. It's good to have you here. So if you have any questions about today's topic, throw it in the chat. I'm not very good at multitasking between responding to the chat and talking, so I will wait to respond to the chat until I am done kind of running through today's topic. But that chat window is always open before, during, and after the live crowdcast so we can kind of continue the conversation going. It's always my goal to cover topics in less than 15 minutes. So this is just our little break in the day together to talk about some topics that are relevant to membership growth, retention, engagement, those sorts of things that are important to all of us who run associations, trade groups, or membership-based nonprofits. So welcome. I'm really glad that you joined me here today. So the topic for today is things that even smart organizations do that can sabotage their growth. Now, I don't know about you, but I think just about everybody has set some sort of goal for themselves, a big, hairy, audacious goal, and you're really excited about it. And then somewhere along the line, you realize that you inadvertently sabotaged yourself, and it's not going to be possible to reach that goal after all. I think the quintessential goal that always springs to mind for me is like running a marathon. Like so many people say, I'm going to run a marathon next year. And that is one of those goals that is really easy to sabotage yourself on. You could say you're going to run the marathon and then, always be saying, I'm going to run a marathon, but never taking the follow-up steps to actually get it done. You could choose an event that's too close. Like if I were to say, I'm going to run a marathon in 2020, and then I choose an event that's like in January, well, that really doesn't give me enough time as a fairly novice runner to train and get ready. So, I set a deadline that is too soon in the future for me to work up to what I need to do. You could overload your calendar with lots of other things that prevent you from being able to do the training. You could push yourself too hard and get injured, which then takes you out of the possibility of being able to run the distance. You could fail to register for a race in time, or you could get stuck in a bad mindset and then just find yourself kind of hitting the wall every single time you go out to train. So there are probably 1,000 different ways that you could sabotage that goal of running the marathon. Now, if you're not a runner, maybe you can't relate to that particular example, but there are probably other goals that you can relate to. Maybe you've wanted to lose 30 pounds. Maybe you've wanted to start grad school. Maybe you've wanted to, strengthen your marriage, anything like that, where there are steps involved to actually be able to achieve it. There are 1,000 different ways, probably more than 1,000 different ways, that you could sabotage the progress that you would make toward that goal. Well, organizations do the exact same thing. So, organizations often say they want to achieve a particular goal next year. And just like with running the marathon, they can say that this is our year, 2020. We are going to grow big. We're going to grow strong. We're going to attract all these new members, and then really not do anything different to make it happen. They could set a target that is too fast for the progress to actually happen. They could be busy with lots of other priorities and just not have the bandwidth to kind of invest in what needs to happen to make the goal happen. They could not be keeping progress along the way with the different milestones that need to happen. So just like us personally, organizations do the exact same thing. Now, I think those are, perhaps some obvious examples, but there are 3 less obvious examples of sabotage that came to mind as I was thinking about this topic. And I would be really curious to hear from you in the chat if you have recognized in your organizations, it doesn't have to be the one that you lead. Perhaps you're a member of an organization, and you can see that there are some things that they do that aren't necessarily in alignment with the goals that they say that they want, some things that they're doing to sabotage themselves. But the 3 kind of less obvious examples that came to mind for me, the first one I call kind of procrastinating or procrasti-experting. And this is kind of that tendency that organizations have to think that they don't know how to do something. Like they want to grow, but we don't know how we're going to do it. So we just kind of stay in this continuous learning mode. We're going to conferences, we're going to webinars, we're listening to speakers, we're talking to experts. And instead of actually doing anything to make growth happen, we just kind of stay stuck in this learning mode. That is one way that organizations can tend to sabotage their own growth and not find it possible to move forward. It's just that procrastinating, procrasti-experting. The second thing that I see a lot of organizations do, which they think is really smart, but it can backfire on them, are member surveys. So surveying members and finding out what they want from the organization, totally a smart thing to do. But what often happens is that organizations aren't strategic about the questions that are asked, or they get the results back in and they don't really know what to do with the results. So nothing really happens. And so from the organization's perspective, there isn't a change that's possible based on the survey. And then the next year, they just go out with another annual membership survey. And the members are like, but like nothing happened from the last one. So why are we doing the survey again? So it just becomes one of those things that isn't good for the organization and it isn't good for the member, but the organization feels like they're doing what's expected and smart because we want to know what members want. So that's kind of the second thing that organizations can do to sabotage their growth. And then the third thing is, again, really smart to be budget conscious, to know what you have to spend on different supports for your organization. But I also find that sometimes organizations get stuck in kind of a poverty mentality, that in their efforts to be good stewards of money, they don't necessarily make the strategic investments that they need to make. Now, a lot of times this doesn't come right out blatantly, we're not going to spend the money. It comes out as conversations that don't go anywhere. Talking about wanting to do something, but then the next meeting you have, you're still talking about the same thing. It's vetting solutions and vetting solutions and vetting solutions. And it's like not being able to kind of pull the trigger on making a decision and being able to move forward. And it comes from being afraid to make a mistake. But staying in that state of being afraid to make a mistake and, wanting to be cautious about spending money without making a mistake, that can sabotage your growth because you aren't able to make the investments that are going to actually push you forward. So those are 3 things that immediately came to mind for me. And I would be really curious to hear from you what comes to mind for you. So Julie says that organizations that she has seen have lots of great ideas in the moment, but not much follow through. and pursuing growth for the sake of growth. And that's not always the right strategy. I would agree 100% with both of those things, Julie. So as I said, there are 1,000 different ways to sabotage your growth, both personally and as an organization. And that's totally normal, totally normal. Every organization does some version of this. So my message for you today is not that, these things are bad and you're a bad organization for doing these things. It's be aware of these sorts of things creeping up on you and perhaps not even recognizing that they're happening. Step back, look at the big picture and go, I see. I see you, sabotage, and work your way through it. Because being aware of it is certainly the first step to solving the problem. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts in the chat, so let's continue the conversation. That is what I had to share with you today about sabotage, but just a couple of quick notes about what's coming up. The next 2 episodes are going to be guest perspectives. So periodically during this crowdcast, we will have weeks that I am not available. So it will be guest hosted. So next week, I'm actually going to have one of my clients, Margaret Vaughn. I'm expecting her to be here with you. Margaret has been the executive director for several different associations over the years. Gosh, I've known her for more than a decade. She was the very first client that I ever set up on the Wild Apricot software platform. And I've just really appreciated her perspective over the years. So she's going to come on and kind of share what she's learned about growing organizations, engaging members, those sorts of things. So you will get to hear her perspective next week. And then the week after that, Amelie from my team, who kind of helps us here with strategy and thinking through possibilities for marketing and things like that, she is going to guest on the week after. So week 4 is Margaret, or week 3 is Margaret. Week 4 ought to be Amelie. So you will have just a mix of perspectives and ideas coming to you as part of this Crowdcast series. The other thing that I will mention to you now is that the current member experience design group is just going into its 6th week. It's a 6-week program where we dive deep into the 8 stages of member experience, and the participants really go into an in-depth assessment of what their organization does to move members along in their engagement journey from end to end. So we are doing week 6 that's kicking off on Sunday, and then this group will be done. And the next group, I just mapped out the calendar for that, and it is starting the week of October 13th. So if you have been thinking about kind of diving deeper into this whole topic area of member experience and focusing on what your organization can do to improve your growth, engagement, and retention, that group may be a great option for you. So you could shoot me an email, or you can go to joyofmembership.com/experience, and there'll be details there. There's a waiting list that you can get on if you are interested in joining the group that is starting up on October 13th. So that's what I have for you today. Let's keep the conversation going, and I will see you back here next week. Take care.